Howdy folks, my name is Richard Procopio, aka Bog Otter, and welcome back to another special video edition of the Flameseeker Chronicles for Massively.com. In today's episode, I'd like to discuss rewards in Guild Wars 2, and it kind of stems from Colin Johansson making some forum posts recently that suggest that ArenaNet is about to kind of unveil or unfurl some plans to revamp some of the reward structures that are in place in the game. Back in January, Colin posted kind of like a state of the game or a roadmap for 2013, which covered a lot of the changes that they were looking at making for the game in the early half of 2013. Well, it looks like from some comments that he's posted that they're going to put out another plan in July to kind of show us what is going to happen for the rest of 2013. So that's really cool. And I think that rewards in general is something that they continually look at and continually to adapt and improve upon. But they still have some ways to go. You know, we've seen some tweaks over the past 6 months, certainly to certain areas, like the boss chests, right, for all of the world bosses and stuff like that. They, now that you get the little daily, chest, and you're at least guaranteed to get a rare out of it, things like that. And they've added the progression system to World versus World, right? So you can actually rank up your character and unlock tiny little perks to help you in World versus World. And they also added like the Laurel vendor for both, in World versus World. That's pretty recent. Now you can get Ascended gear there. But the Laurel vendor for doing your dailies, and the fact that you can pick your own dailies and stuff like that. So this year we've gotten a lot of improvements to reward structures. But I think players overall still think that there's more work that can be done. And I would agree with that. There's certain areas of the game that need to be bolstered. And we're going to talk about all this. But I want to start off with a couple quotes from Colin Johansson so you kind of know the context of where this topic is coming from. So one of the quotes he put up on the forum says, we plan to do a lot of reward work across the board, including on our dungeons, but we'll go more into specific detail on that in July as a comprehensive summary. He also says, we're still working on a system that rewards bonuses and rewards for achieving various thresholds of achievement points on your account. More news on this soon. That one sounds really interesting to me because a lot of people are used to achievement systems right now. It's just like these arbitrary points, right? And I still remember years and years ago, maybe we're going back eight years ago or more, when I first started playing World of Warcraft, that it's funny that your achievement, you get these points, right, for doing different things in the game, but it's not a currency. You can't spend them on. It's just basically useless points that you just can compare to other people's points totals. Well, it's interesting that you're not going to be able to spend it like a currency from what I'm gathering from this, which I think is a good thing. But if you hit certain thresholds, you're going to unlock different kinds of rewards and bonuses. We could talk more about that later, but I think that's interesting. He also goes on to say, this is a longer quote that I'll try to summarize some points on. It says, we want champions to be more rewarding. So places like Ore and South Sun, where events can scale up and create champions, become one of the more fun and rewarding places in the game to play. Let me stop right there before I continue. I agree with this approach a bit, because one of the things that they want to do is they want to scale up these events and encounters. So it's not just, oh, we throw a bunch more creatures at you, or the creatures do more damage, or the creatures have more health. They want to be able to say, all right, at certain population thresholds, we want to introduce different kinds of monsters, all right? Instead of just throwing a whole bunch of Risen at you, now we're going to have some ranged spellcasting Risen, and some more veterans, and some more champions, and different things like that to make it more challenging. The problem is, in current form, when they add veterans and when they add champions, it just extends the time it takes to take out these events by so much, and they reward you with so very little. Like a champion, I joke around with my friends, we call them blues or better, because all they're guaranteed to drop is a blue item or better, and most of the time you're getting a blue item. And it's just not worth the time to take out some of these champions. When I'm running around, even if I'm running around with 2 or 3 friends in the open world, we avoid champions at all costs. It's just not worth the time. So it's good to hear that they are looking at champions once again specifically, because they've already kind of revamped champions a few months ago, tried to make them more worthwhile. That's where the whole blue or better thing came from. But they need more work on it, because it's not worth the time. So it also says, we'd also like to tie in additional unique rewards to the temple chains to make them more worthwhile and differentiate them from the giant boss encounters, which will also be upgrading to be more exciting, to give you a reason to do each in a day. I'll stop there again. That's another good change. It's one of my big critiques, and we can talk about this more later, about the reward systems in Guild Wars 2 is there's a disparity between how much time you put into certain things and get the same reward as other things. And we see this across the board. We see this with dungeon runs, right? There are paths, there are explorable paths that people will never step foot into because they just take so much more time for the same reward, right? And COF Path 1, which can take, 5 to 7 or 8 minutes if you know what you're doing, that's the one that's run over and over and over again because it's the most worth your time investment. So this is another area where I think I agree with them that right now, I'll run around and I'll do these boss encounters and I'll do like the fire elemental, or I'll do the shadow behemoth or the shatterer, right? And these are relatively quick things. Jormag, Claw of Jormag is a little bit longer, but still, I'll do all of these kind of boss events all day long if the time syncs up because I like the reward for how much I invested time. But I will never go to Ore and do these temple events, right? Because they're, even though they're harder, and some of them like Grenth is actually like it's a more challenging fight and a more fun fight when you actually succeed. But the problem is getting players to do all of the events that lead up to these, and it's just a huge time commitment, and you get the same reward as, spending 10 minutes on the Shadow Behemoth, or not even that, like 5 minutes on the Shadow Behemoth, right, if you time it right. So it definitely is intriguing to me to see that they're going to have unique rewards. They actually said that, right? We'd also like to tie in additional unique rewards to the temple chain. So if there is a special cool helm or a weapon or something like that that you can only get by defeating the Grenth boss a certain number of times or whatever, then that'll intrigue people. That'll lure people into doing that more often because they want to show off these cool skins that they actually worked hard to get. So I like that idea a lot. He continues and said, we also like to add more value in you. This is interesting. We'd also like to add more value and use to blue and green items so that killing things like veterans feels more like rewarding when those types of item drops when doing these events in Ore as well. Okay, yeah, blue and green items, they're just basically worthless at this time. I mean, you could sell them to the vendor, you can salvage them if you really need materials, you can throw them in the Mystic Toilet and hope you get something better, but for the most part, those are just throwaway items, and I'm interested, what could they actually be doing with that? We'd like to add more value and use to blue-green items. Maybe some sort of, you can turn them in for some sort of currency and then use that currency somewhere else, or maybe more Mystic Forge recipes that use them. Should be interesting. What do you guys think? Let me a comment in the comments field below. What do you think they can do to blue and green items to make them more worthwhile getting? Let's see. Okay, so those are the quotes that I have from Colin, and I'm excited to see what they come up with in July. I want to see this plan. I want to see what kind of changes are made in the game. A couple things, like we've talked about the time investment thing and the COF. That's across the board. Same thing goes with like fractals, right? It's fun to run the fractals from time to time. The problem is sometimes you just get a really bad combination, right? Fractals, you're supposed to... I don't know, the way it was billed when they first came out was like these, you get a random set of 3 of these short kind of instances, and for the most part that's true, and a lot of them feel pretty similar, but then you'll get the Cliffside Fractal, which, by the way, I love the Cliffside Fractal as a whole, but it just, when you're just doing a set of fractals, it takes too long. And the Dredge one, right? Is that the Underground one? I forget what it's called exactly. I think it's the Underground one. The one where you go through tons and tons of dredge, and you're opening up the different gates in the beginning, and then you have the final boss, which you have to dump the molten lava on. That fractal takes forever. And that's the thing is, like, if you get a pair with like the swamp and like the underwater even, or something else, you can bang out those 3 in like 20 minutes. Or 25 minutes, right? But if you get the wrong 3, then you're talking about looking at an hour or so. So it's things like that where I think that they either need to tighten some of these up so that they're all more or less the same sort of time commitment, or like keep the longer ones in there and just give a little bit of a bonus at the end, a little bit of a nod, like, yeah, we understand that this is this is going to take more of your time. um, Another area that I think that they can improve upon is PvP, structured PvP. Right, there is not a lot for players to go for at this point. Especially if somebody's been doing structured PvP since the beginning, they already are all ranked up, right? And they've gotten the skins to make their character look really cool. What else are they really going for at this point? I know that a complaint from people that are, have done almost all PvP, like they haven't even really done much in the PvE side, is, they come out into the real world, right? They hit Lion's Arch and their character looks like a total noob, right? They've unlocked all these skins and cool looking stuff in PvP, but it doesn't transfer out to PvE. They also don't have a great way to make money, right? So they start to, like, even if they're interested in doing something like, some of the stuff for the living story or whatever, it's hard for them to even like port around the different waypoints because they don't have a lot. There's not a good way to make gold. The opposite's also true, right? If you spend all this time getting a legendary, weapon in PvE, and then you suddenly want to start dabbling in PvP, you're wearing all the newbie clothes and stuff like that. And I understand that they want to keep somewhat of a separate progression path, right? So there's a reason to do one or the other, but not being able to share your accomplishments, or at least like work on, accomplishments across the board, it hinders some of the enjoyment there. So I hope there's some sort of plan to not necessarily just make it you can use anything anywhere, but some sort of system in place where you can kind of work towards it, right? Once you've unlocked things in PvP, maybe there are things you can start earning to help your or give you a boost on the PvE side, at least from a cosmetic point of view. So that's just another thing. I also feel like there should be more things in the game that are kind of like status symbols, right? You have the legendary weapons status symbol, and that's just, for the people that are really just dedicated to grinding things out and farming a lot of mats, or get really, really lucky on like a legendary precursor, which I'll never ever see. I'll never get. But there's that. But then there's not a lot of other status symbols. There's a lot of the other things just people can just get, right? So if the armor sets from a dungeon, all right, you just run a dungeon, a bunch of times for a week or two, and you'll have your armor set and stuff like that. I'd like there to see, more weapon or armor skins that actually can kind of show off that, oh wow, that person like did a lot to get that. Not necessarily that they farmed up a lot of mats, but that could be part of it. There could be some sort of economic sync to these kind of things, kind of like in Guild Wars 1, where you had like the destroyer weapons and different things like that. Those cost a lot of mats or whatever, to actually craft some of those, but something like that, where, I mean, it might be too late to do something like this, but because the game's been out so long. But something like, if you wanted to tie it to achievements, all right, well, the person that actually ran every single path, story and explorable mode of every single dungeon, well, okay, you got the title to do that, but maybe you get a helmet or a shoulder piece for doing that, right? Or somebody completed every single jumping puzzle, all right, in the game. All right, great. Now you get a weapon skin. Like someone who completed the personal story, they actually had those weapon skins at the end of it that you could only get there, right? That's an example of it. But they can add a couple different things like that. And no, they're not super hard to do, but you actually have to dedicate yourself to kind of, figuring out all these jumping puzzles and locating them all. And I realize that this is an odd suggestion because the game's almost a year old at this point, and some of these things a lot of characters have done. But you get my point. Like, what if you level 5 characters to level 80 or something like that, and you get some sort of trinket or toy? So more things like that show that they basically reward players for playing the game, and give them little status symbols for those that are particularly dedicated. And I would also like there to be some more kind of things to show off for just like super hard, difficult things. I think that across the board, people want more difficult, challenging content in Guild Wars 2. Some of the more difficult stuff we were seeing is, it's interesting, in this Aetherblade Retreat dungeon, some of the achievements are really hard, right? The one where you have to dodge all the cannon blasts from the final boss encounter. and then the one where you have to dodge the walls on the first boss and not get hit by those laser walls at all. Man, that's really hard stuff. And it's interesting. This might be like the first living those. I got the cannon blast one. I'm not even really sure how, to be honest. But the one where you have to dodge the walls in a circle, I don't have that achievement, and that might be the first Living Story achievement since the Living Story started that I might not get. But maybe something like that. We know that only a small number of players is going to finish. Tie some sort of cosmetic reward to that so players can show that off. I think that'd be cool. A Mad King Clock Tower puzzle was a good example. That was a really kind of hardcore jumping puzzle. Not a lot of people actually finished it, and people got a cool reward in that we got an exotic, boots for that, which some people use and stuff like that. But there wasn't really a cool, unique skin attached to it that really kind of shows everybody, hey, you beat the clock tower. What if there was, some cool cape, or I don't know what it could be. But they're creative over there. They've got awesome artists. So give us some sort of reward where we can show off, so you can look around Lion's Arch or one of the towns, or see somebody out in the world and go, I know that was hard to get. I wish I got that kind of thing. So I don't know. I think more rewards like that would really help. The other thing, another thing, I just have a lot of ideas. I hope they're not horrible ideas. I hope some of these are actually good. And I think I mentioned this in my Flameseeker Chronicles, where I talked about raiding in Guild Wars 2. I think that the dungeons need to have some sort of random drops in it as well. And some things that might be a little bit unique to the dungeons. I like the fact that you can not necessarily just run the dungeon and know in advance how many tokens you need to get the suit of armor or the piece of armor that you want, and to actually know up front, I'm not actually going to get anything from this run, but if I run this 3 more times, then I will have my set piece or whatever. I like the fact that there might be a chance on a boss that a item that only drops on that boss will spawn. Loot tables. And I'm not talking about like putting some crazy weapon that only drops like 1 out of 1,000 times on that boss. That's just frustrating. People will just farm that and really want that and never see it. Have them have a loot table where there's this boss drops 5 items, and there's a 20% chance that it'll drop each one or something like that. And also have some rare like salvage materials that can just drop like on all of the creatures in there. So even when you're fighting the trash, there's still that chance that you can make a gold or two by getting like a lodestone or a bunch of orichalcum or something like that from a salvage item and stuff like that. They actually have something similar to that in the Aetherblade Retreat, where you get this rare salvage piece. Of course, every time I salvage that thing, I get mithril ore. I just want to you can get lodestones out of those, but I get mithril ore. But stuff like that is fun, where you're not just waiting for the end of the dungeon to collect your tokens and move on. They give you a reason to kind of like go through the dungeon, and the more creatures you kill, the better chance you get one of these like small little jackpots and stuff. And that would also help things like the Citadel of Flame farming issue. Like, everybody chooses to farm the 5-minute long path because that's the quickest one to get done. All right, well, maybe I'll do a longer path because every one of those creatures I'm killing and all these bosses that I'm killing, right? People skip bosses all the time in these instances, but if they actually had a chance to drop some cooler stuff, I think more players would do it. So I think they have some room to improve the rewards. The final thing I'll kind of mention is that a lot of the systems that are in place, people have the rewards for, right? The people that have been doing fractals, well, they have all the fractal rewards, right? The fractal relics are basically useless at this point, and they've got their ascended gear with their Agna resistance, and they might maybe have gotten the fractal weapons that they wanted. I know that people. Those are very rare, and they don't usually get the one that they wanted. I saw a suggestion on Reddit the other day where there should be a Mystic Forge recipe that you can put in your fractal relic and maybe some of the vial of condensed essences and stuff like that in there, and actually make a new random fractal weapon. But that's beside the point. But a lot of these reward systems that are in place, the Laurel system and different things like that, they were fun and they helped players for a while, but at this point, players are done, right? A lot of players have gotten what they needed from those vendors, and so now they just collect tokens that sit there and do nothing. It would be nice that every month or every 2 months or whatever, when they're putting out these updates, Just touch each one of these reward vendors and put a couple little things in them. Put a mini pet here, put a cosmetic item there, put an everlasting tonic recipe here. So you might not do this huge sweeping change, but hey, add a couple things to the fractal vendor, add a couple things to the laurel vendor, put a couple things on the a couple of the dungeon vendors and different things like that. And there's some kinks and some disadvantages to doing that. I understand it's not just as easy as doing that, but I think just maybe not necessarily wait all the time for a huge revamp to one specific system. Just throw a few things on these different vendors and stuff, and just give players some new things to go for, because there are still players that are doing fractals and running the dungeons and different things, and they just have tokens that they don't have anything to use them on. So anyway, that's all kind of my thoughts on the reward systems. What do you think? What would you want to see ArenaNet add or change about the rewards in Guild Wars 2 to make you feel more incentivized to play? Let me know in the comments below so we can discuss this. I hope that they are going to come out with something early in July, just to let us know what these changes are. I'm excited to see what this is all about. And don't forget to stay tuned in to massively.com for all of your MMO news and Guild Wars 2 news. And I will talk to everybody next time. Take care and have a great day.